The water below looked black as ink in the fading twilight, and Miriam Foster wondered if the fall would hurt, or if the darkness would simply swallow her whole before she felt anything at all. She gripped the wooden railing of the bridge spanning the Rio Grande, her knuckles white beneath her thin cotton gloves, and tried to remember when life had stopped feeling worth the effort of living it. The February wind of 1878 cut through her worn shawl, and she thought distantly that at least she would not have to worry about mending it again after tonight. "Evening, miss." The voice came from behind her, deep and steady, and she startled so badly she nearly lost her footing on the bridge's edge. "Didn't mean to frighten you. Just noticed you standing there a while, and, well, that railing doesn't look too sturdy." Miriam turned slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. The man approaching wore dusty trail clothes and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed most of his face, but she could see enough to note he was young, perhaps only a few years older than her own 21 years. He moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to long days in the saddle, and there was something in his posture that suggested genuine concern rather than idle curiosity. "I'm fine," she managed, though her voice came out thin and unconvincing. "Just taking the evening air." Must be mighty interesting air to require such close inspection of the river. He stopped a respectful distance away, close enough to speak without shouting, but far enough that she did not feel crowded. "Though I suppose it's not really my business. Still, my mama raised me to be neighborly, and leaving a lady alone on a bridge after dark doesn't seem particularly neighborly." Something about the gentle persistence in his tone made Miriam's throat tighten with unexpected emotion. She had been so certain no one would notice, that her disappearance would be just another unremarked tragedy in a border town that had seen its share of hardship and loss. The realization that this stranger cared enough to stop, even if only out of politeness, cracked something inside her chest. "What's your name?" he asked, and the simple question hung in the cooling air between them like an offered hand. "Miriam," she whispered, "Miriam Foster." "Pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Foster. I'm Ryder Hamilton." He touched the brim of his hat in a courteous gesture. "I've been trailing cattle up from the south, and my crew is camped just outside town. We're heading to the stockyards in Kansas, but we stopped in Laredo to resupply." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I don't know what's troubling you, miss, but I do know that whatever it is probably looks worse in the dark. Things have a way of seeming more manageable in the daylight." "You don't know anything about it," Miriam said, but there was no heat in her words, only exhaustion. "You don't know what I've lost or what I'm facing?" "You're right, I don't," Ryder agreed. "But I'd like to, if you're willing to tell me. And even if you're not, I can't in good conscience leave you here alone. So if you won't come away from that railing, I suppose I'll just have to wait here with you until you do." Miriam studied his shadowed face, trying to determine if he was serious. Something in his stillness told her he was. This man, this perfect stranger, was prepared to spend his evening on a bridge in the cold simply to ensure she did not harm herself. The absurdity of it made her want to laugh, but what came out instead was a choked sob. "My father died 3 months ago," she heard herself say. "Yellow fever, and my mother passed when I was 12, so there was no one else. He left debts I didn't know about, gambling debts to some very unpleasant men. They've given me until the end of the week to pay what's owed, and I don't have it. I don't have anything." "How much do they want?" Ryder asked quietly. $300. The sum might as well have been $3,000 for all her ability to acquire it. "I've been working at the hotel, cleaning rooms, but it barely covers my rent and meals. I sold everything worth selling weeks ago." Ryder was silent for a long moment, and Miriam felt a flush of shame heat her cheeks. Why was she telling this man her troubles? He could not help her. No one could. And she was only embarrassing herself by laying bare her desperate circumstances to a stranger. "Come away from the edge, Miss Foster," he said finally. "Please, let me walk you home, and tomorrow when the sun's up, we'll figure out what to do about those debts. I promise you, there's a solution that doesn't involve that river." "You can't promise that," Miriam protested, even as she felt her resolve wavering. "You don't even know me." "No, but I know that you deserve better than a cold death in dark water. And I know that I couldn't live with myself if I walked away and let it happen." He extended his hand toward her, palm up, an invitation rather than a demand. "Trust me, just for tonight. Come away from there and let me see you home safe." Perhaps it was the exhaustion that had settled into her bones, Or perhaps it was the unexpected kindness in his voice, but Miriam found herself reaching out to take his hand. His grip was warm and calloused, the hand of a man who worked hard for his living, and it steadied her as she stepped back from the railing onto the solid planks of the bridge proper. "There now," Ryder said, and she could hear the relief in his tone. "That's better already. Where's home, Miss Foster?" "Just Miriam, please." She withdrew her hand from his, though part of her missed the warmth immediately. "I have a room above the Mercantile on San Bernardo Street. It's not far. Then let's get you there before full dark settles in." He fell into step beside her as they started across the bridge back toward town, his presence solid and reassuring. "Have you eaten today?" The question caught her off guard. "I had some bread this morning." "That's not much of a meal. Would you object if we stopped somewhere for supper?" "My treat, of course. You'll think more clearly on a full stomach." Miriam wanted to refuse, to maintain some shred of dignity and independence. But her pride had already taken such a beating that it seemed foolish to turn down a hot meal when she was genuinely hungry. "I don't want to take advantage of your kindness." "It's not taking advantage if I'm offering freely." They had reached the end of the bridge now, and the lights of Laredo twinkled ahead of them in the gathering dusk. "There's a place on Zaragoza Street that makes a decent stew, if memory serves. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and filling." "I know the one you mean, Mrs. Garcia's boarding house." "That's it. So, what do you say, Miriam? Will you let me buy you supper?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. They walked through the dusty streets in companionable silence, and Miriam found herself stealing glances at her rescuer. In the better light of the street lamps, she could see that Ryder Hamilton was indeed young, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and a strong, honest face. His eyes were a startling blue-gray, and when they met hers, she saw genuine concern there, not pity or calculation. Mrs. Garcia's boarding house was warm and welcoming, smelling of spices and cooking meat. The proprietress herself, a round woman with kind eyes and streaks of gray in her black hair, greeted them with a smile. "Miriam, child, good to see you, and you've brought a guest." "This is Mr. Hamilton," Miriam said. "He's hoping you might have some supper for us." "For you, always, Mrs." Garcia showed them to a small table near the kitchen and returned moments later with 2 bowls of rich beef stew and thick slices of fresh bread. "Eat, eat. You look half-starved, both of you." Ryder waited until Miriam had taken several bites before speaking again. "Tell me about your father if you want. What kind of man was he?" It was a kind way of asking, and Miriam found the words coming more easily than she expected. "He was a good man, mostly. A clerk at the freight office. He worked hard, and he loved me. I know that. But after Mama died, he started spending time at the card tables. I think he was lonely and didn't know how else to fill the evenings. At first it was just for entertainment, but then it became more than that. He'd win sometimes, and when he did, he'd bring home little gifts or better food. But the losses always outnumbered the wins." She stirred her stew, watching the vegetables swirl in the thick broth. "I didn't realize how bad it had gotten until after he was gone, and the men came demanding payment." "These men who are threatening you, do they work for someone in particular?" Miriam nodded. "A man named Silverton. He runs several businesses in town, at least that's what people say. The saloon, a freight company, some other things. He's the one who held Papa's markers, and now he's the one who wants his money." Ryder's jaw tightened. "Has he threatened you directly?" "Not him personally. He sent 2 men to my room last week. They said if I couldn't pay in cash, they were sure Mr. Silverton could find other uses for a young woman." She could not quite suppress the shudder that ran through her at the memory. "I've been trying to avoid them since then, but I know I can't hide forever. Laredo isn't that big a town." "No, it's not." Ryder was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. $300 is a lot of money. But it's not impossible. I have some savings from the cattle drive. Let me pay off your father's debt." Miriam's spoon clattered against her bowl. "I couldn't possibly accept that. You don't even know me." "But I'd like to," he said simply. "And besides, what good is money if you can't use it to help someone who needs it? I don't have family waiting on that cash. It's just sitting in a bank in Abilene doing nothing but collecting dust." "That's very generous, but it would take me years to pay you back, if I ever could. I won't put myself in debt to someone else, no matter how kind their intentions." Ryder leaned back in his chair, studying her with those steady blue-gray eyes. What if it wasn't a debt? What if we made it a partnership instead? What kind of partnership? Miriam asked warily. The ranch I work for, the Circle H, is owned by my uncle. He's getting older and wants to retire, and he's offered to sell me the operation. It's not a huge spread, but it's profitable, and it has good water rights. The thing is, it's hard running a ranch alone, especially when you're trying to build it up. I could use a partner, someone with a head for figures and organization. He paused. Your father was a clerk, so I'm guessing you know your way around accounts and bookkeeping? I do, but I don't know anything about ranching. You can learn, I did. He leaned forward again, warming to his subject. Look, I'm not suggesting anything improper. What I'm proposing is a business arrangement. You come work for the Circle H as a partner. I'll pay off your debts here, and you'll work to earn your share of the ranch. Room and board included, of course, and a fair wage besides. Once you've worked long enough to equal what I paid out for you, we'll be even partners in the operation. No debt, just honest work for honest pay. It was a wild proposition, the kind of offer that Miriam would have dismissed out of hand under normal circumstances. But these were not normal circumstances, and she had been standing on a bridge contemplating drowning less than an hour ago. Ryder Hamilton was offering her not just a way out of her immediate danger, but a future, a purpose, something to build toward. I don't understand why you would do this for a stranger, she said quietly. Surely there are easier ways to find a ranch partner. Ryder smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his face from merely honest to genuinely handsome. Maybe I believe that the universe puts people in each other's paths for a reason. I've been thinking for months that I needed help with the ranch, but couldn't figure out how to afford a partner. And tonight, I met someone who needs exactly what I have to offer, and who can offer exactly what I need in return. That seems like more than coincidence to me. Or it could be the wildest foolishness either of us ever contemplated. It could be that too, he agreed cheerfully. But I've found that the best things in life usually involve a little bit of foolishness. So, what do you say, Miriam Foster? Will you take a chance on a partnership with a cowboy you just met on a bridge? Miriam looked down at her nearly empty bowl, then back up at the man across from her. There was no guile in his expression, no hidden agenda that she could detect. He was offering her a lifeline, and perhaps more importantly, he was offering her hope. She thought about the dark water of the Rio Grande and how close she had come to letting it claim her. She thought about her father and how much he had loved her despite his weaknesses. He would want her to live, to fight, to seize whatever chances came her way. Yes, she heard herself say. Yes, I'll accept your partnership, Mr. Hamilton. Ryder, he corrected gently, if we're going to be partners, we should probably use first names. Ryder, then. She extended her hand across the table, and he shook it firmly, sealing their unlikely bargain. When do we start? First thing tomorrow, I'll go see this Silverton character and settle your father's debts. I don't want those men bothering you anymore. Then we'll need to collect whatever belongings you have and make arrangements for your travel. The Circle H is about 30 miles north of San Antonio, so it's a fair journey from here. We'll take it slow, stop in San Antonio to get you proper supplies and work clothes. Figure 3, maybe 4 days of travel total. He signaled Mrs. Garcia for more bread. Tonight, though, you need to rest. When's the last time you slept properly? Miriam had to think about it. I'm not sure. A week, maybe? Every time I close my eyes, I just worry. Well, tonight you can stop worrying, at least about the immediate threats. I'll walk you back to your room, and tomorrow we'll start sorting everything out. Does that sound acceptable? More than acceptable. It sounds like a miracle. They finished their meal in more comfortable conversation, with Ryder telling her about the Circle H and what her responsibilities might entail. The ranch ran about 300 head of cattle, he explained, along with a small remuda of horses. There was a main house that needed considerable work, a bunkhouse for the hired hands, and several outbuildings in various states of repair. His uncle had let things slide in recent years as his health declined, but the bones of a good operation were there. I won't lie to you. It's hard work, Ryder said as they stepped back out into the night. Long days, especially during roundup and branding season, but it's honest work, and there's something satisfying about building something with your own hands, about knowing that your effort directly impacts your success. I'm not afraid of hard work, Miriam assured him as they walked towards San Bernardo Street. "I've been scrubbing floors and changing linens for months. At least at the ranch, I'll be working towards something that's mine." "Ours," Ryder corrected. "That's what a partnership means." The mercantile was dark when they arrived, but the outside stairs led up to the second floor, where Miriam rented her small room. She paused at the bottom step, suddenly uncertain. "Thank you," she said inadequately. "For everything. For stopping on the bridge, for supper, for the opportunity. I won't let you down." "I know you won't." He tipped his hat to her. "Get some rest, Miriam. I'll be back mid-morning to collect you, and we'll go see Silverton together. You don't have to come with me." "I know I don't have to. I want to. Partners look out for each other, remember?" He waited until she had climbed the stairs and let herself into her room before turning to walk back toward where his camp lay outside town. Miriam watched him go from her small window, still half convinced that she would wake tomorrow and find the entire evening had been a desperate dream conjured by her exhausted mind. But morning came with bright winter sunshine, and Ryder arrived exactly when he said he would, riding a sturdy bay gelding and leading a pretty sorrel mare. He looked more formidable in full daylight, she thought, tall and broad-shouldered, with the lean, muscular build of a man who made his living outdoors. He had shaved and cleaned up, though his clothes were still plain working gear. "Morning," he called up to her window. "I brought Sage for you to ride. She's got a smooth gait and a sweet temperament. Figured we might need the horses depending on where we find Silverton." Miriam grabbed her shawl and hurried down to meet him. "I should warn you, I'm not much of a rider." "That's all right. Sage will take care of you. I've had her since she was a filly, and she's as reliable as they come." He helped Miriam mount, adjusting her stirrups to the proper length and showing her how to hold the reins. "Just sit easy and let her do the work. She'll follow Copper here without any trouble." They rode through Laredo's morning bustle, past merchants opening their shops and freight wagons making deliveries. Several people called greetings to Miriam, their expressions curious when they noticed her companion. She knew there would be talk, but she found she did not care as much as she might have expected. Let them gossip. She was leaving this town and its whispers behind. Silverton's office was in a building near the main plaza, above the saloon he owned. Ryder helped Miriam dismount and tied both horses to the hitching rail outside. "Let me do most of the talking," he said quietly. "Men like this respond better to other men, unfortunately. But I want you there so he knows you're under my protection now." The office was surprisingly well appointed, with a large desk and leather chairs that spoke of money and influence. Silverton himself was a thin man in his 40s, with cold eyes and manicured hands. He looked up when they entered, his expression shifting from annoyance at the interruption to calculation when he recognized Miriam. "Miss Foster, I was beginning to think you were avoiding my associates." "She was," Ryder said flatly. "And with good reason from what I hear. But that's done now. I'm here to settle Jacob Foster's debts in full." Silverton's gaze shifted to Ryder, assessing. "And you are?" "Ryder Hamilton, Miss Foster's business partner. How much does she owe you exactly?" $300 plus interest accumulated over the past 3 months. Call it $350 total." "I call it robbery," Ryder said evenly. "But I'm not here to argue. I'm here to pay." He pulled a leather pouch from inside his coat and counted out bills onto Silverton's desk. "That's $350. I want a receipt stating that all debts between you and the Foster family are paid in full, and I want any markers or IOUs that Jacob Foster signed." Silverton counted the money twice, his expression sour. "You're making a poor investment, Hamilton. Foster was a drunk and a fool, and his daughters likely know better." Ryder leaned forward, his hands flat on the desk, and when he spoke, his voice was soft but edged with steel. "You just took my money, Silverton, so our business is concluded. That means you've got no call to speak about Miss Foster or her father ever again. Are we clear on that?" For a moment, tension crackled in the air, and Miriam held her breath. Then Silverton smiled thinly and pulled out a piece of paper, writing out the receipt with quick, scratchy strokes. He opened a drawer and withdrew several crumpled papers, the gambling markers her father had signed, and pushed them across the desk along with the receipt. "Clear as glass," he said. "Always a pleasure doing business with reasonable men, though I hope for your sake, Hamilton, that you got something worthwhile for your $350. "I got peace of mind," Ryder said, scooping up the papers and tucking them safely away. "That's worth more than money to some of us." He took Miriam's elbow. "Come on, partner, we're done here." They were halfway down the stairs before Miriam found her voice. "That was incredible. I've been terrified of that man for months, and you just walked in and handled it like it was nothing." "It was something," Ryder said. "But it's over now. You don't owe Silverton or anyone else in this town a single thing." He stopped at the bottom of the stairs and pulled out the gambling markers, then struck a match and set them alight, dropping them to the dusty ground and watching until they were nothing but ash. "That's the end of it. Now let's go pack up your things and start thinking about the future instead of the past." Miriam's possessions fit into a single carpet bag and a small trunk. Most of her mother's things had been sold months ago, but she had kept a few precious items: a cameo brooch, a lace handkerchief, her mother's recipe book with its careful handwriting. Her father's pocket watch, the one thing of value she had refused to part with, went into her skirt pocket where she could feel its familiar weight. Ryder loaded her trunk onto a pack mule with practiced efficiency while she settled her other affairs. She paid her final week's rent to the mercantile owner, said goodbye to Mrs. Garcia and the few other people in Laredo who had shown her kindness. By early afternoon, they were ready to leave. The trail north was well traveled, but still wild enough that Miriam understood why Ryder had insisted on coming to collect her himself, rather than sending her ahead alone. They passed the occasional freight wagon or fellow traveler, but for long stretches it was just the two of them, the horses, and the vast Texas landscape rolling away in all directions. Ryder was an easy companion, she discovered. He did not press her with constant conversation, but when they did talk, he listened attentively and responded thoughtfully. He told her about growing up on his uncle's ranch after his own parents died in a cholera outbreak when he was 14. "Uncle Robert took me in without hesitation, even though he was a bachelor set in his ways. Taught me everything about ranching, about reading the land and the sky, about treating animals and people with respect. He sounds like a good man," Miriam said. "The best. You'll like him. He's planning to move to Austin once the sale is finalized, wants to be near his sister in his retirement. But he's been running the ranch alone since his foreman quit last year, and it's been hard on him. He'll be relieved to know I found someone to help." They made camp that first night by a creek, and Ryder showed Miriam how to properly unsaddle and hobble a horse, how to build a fire and set up a bedroll. He cooked beans and bacon in a cast-iron skillet, and they ate watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Are you scared?" Ryder asked. "About leaving everything you know behind?" Miriam considered the question. "Less than I probably should be. Maybe because I didn't have much left in Laredo to hold on to. Or maybe because being scared of the unknown seems almost luxurious compared to being scared of what I knew was coming." She wrapped her hands around her tin cup of coffee, absorbing its warmth. "What about you? Are you scared that you just hitched yourself to a partner who might not work out?" "A little," he admitted. "But mostly I'm hopeful. I've got a good feeling about this, about you. I think we're going to make a fine team." "I hope you're right." "Give it time. We're barely a day into this partnership." They reached San Antonio 2 days later and spent the better part of a day outfitting Miriam with proper work clothes, boots, and supplies. Ryder insisted she pick out a good hat to protect her from the sun and a warm coat for cold mornings. "Consider it an investment in the ranch," he said when she protested at the expense. "Can't have my partner getting sunstroke or frostbite." The final leg of the journey took them into hill country, where the land grew more rugged and beautiful. Live oaks dotted the rolling hills, and cypress trees lined the creeks. Ryder pointed out landmarks as they rode, showing her the boundaries of what would soon be their shared property. "That ridge there, that's the eastern edge, and that line of trees follows the creek that runs through the heart of the ranch. Never goes dry, even in the worst droughts. That's part of what makes this land so valuable." The Circle H ranch house came into view in late afternoon, a long, low structure built of local limestone with a wide porch across the front. It was weathered but solid, surrounded by corrals and outbuildings. An older man emerged from the house as they approached, shading his eyes against the sun. "Uncle Robert," Ryder called, swinging down from his saddle. "We made good time." Robert Hamilton was in his 60s, Miriam guessed, with silver hair and a deeply weathered face. But his grip was still strong when he shook her hand, and his eyes were sharp and assessing. "So, you're the young lady my nephew's been going on about in his telegram. Welcome to the Circle H, Miss Foster." "Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. And please, call me Miriam." "Robert, then. Come on inside and we'll get you settled." Maria left some supper warming for you before she headed home." He led them into the house, which was spacious if somewhat bare. The main room served as kitchen and living area combined, with a large fireplace at one end and a sturdy table that could seat a dozen. "There's 3 bedrooms," Robert explained. "I've been using the one on the south side. The other 2 are yours to divvy up, however seems best." Miriam took the smaller of the 2 remaining bedrooms, a cozy space with a window overlooking the eastern hills. It had a simple bed frame, a chest of drawers, and a washstand, more than adequate for her needs. She could hear Ryder and his uncle talking in the main room as she unpacked her few belongings, their voices a comfortable rumble punctuated by occasional laughter. Supper was simple but filling, and afterward Robert showed them the ranch accounts, explaining the seasonal rhythms of the operation. Spring is calving and branding, summer is maintaining the herd and preparing for market, fall is the cattle drive to market, winter is recovery and planning for the next year. Right now, we're in the quiet season, which is good timing for you two to get your feet under you. Over the following weeks, Miriam threw herself into learning everything she could about running a ranch. Robert was a patient teacher, showing her how to read brands, how to assess cattle for health and weight, how to maintain fences and manage water resources. Ryder taught her to ride properly, to handle a rope, to work as part of a team. The physical labor was exhausting at first, but Miriam found she loved the tired satisfaction of a hard day's work, the tangible evidence of her contribution. She took over the ranch bookkeeping, organizing the accounts with a thoroughness that made Robert shake his head in admiration. "You've got a gift for this, girl. I've been muddling through for years, but you've got everything laid out clear as day." "It just needs a system," Miriam demurred, but she was pleased by the praise. "And you need to be charging more for your breeding stock. Your bulls are top quality, but you're underselling them." "Listen to her, Uncle," Ryder said, grinning. "I told you she'd be an asset." As winter gave way to spring, Robert finalized his plans to move to Austin. The sale was completed in March, with Robert signing over the ranch to Ryder in exchange for a payment plan that would leave him comfortable in his retirement. The day he left, he pulled Miriam aside. "Take care of him," he said quietly. "That boy's got a good heart, but he tends to give more than he takes. Make sure he takes care of himself as well as he takes care of everyone else." "I will," Miriam promised. "And Miriam, I'm glad he found you. You're exactly what this place needed." After Robert left, the ranch felt different, more truly theirs. They settled into an easy partnership, dividing responsibilities according to their strengths. Ryder handled most of the outdoor work and animal husbandry, while Miriam managed the business side and coordinated with buyers and suppliers. But they worked together as often as not, and Miriam found herself looking forward to their shared meals and evening conversations more than she wanted to admit. Spring brought calving season, which meant long days and longer nights checking on expectant cows. One particularly difficult birth required both of them working together, Miriam holding the lantern and passing supplies while Ryder carefully helped deliver a breech calf. When the little bull finally slid free and took its first shaky breath, they both laughed with relief and exhaustion. "We make a good team," Ryder said, washing his hands in the bucket of water Miriam brought him. "We do," she agreed, and caught him looking at her with an expression she could not quite read in the lamplight. The moment passed, and they went back to the house to clean up and catch a few hours of sleep before the next day's work began. But something had shifted between them, a recognition that their partnership had become something deeper than a business arrangement. Summer brought its own challenges and rhythms. They hired 3 ranch hands for the busy season, young men who lived in the bunkhouse and worked hard under Ryder's direction. Miriam found herself managing more of the daily operations, while Ryder spent long days in the saddle, checking fence lines and moving cattle to better grazing. They were rarely alone together anymore, and she was surprised by how much she missed his company. One evening after the hands had ridden into town for their weekly night off, Miriam and Ryder sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the hills in shades of gold and purple. The air was thick with the scent of wild honeysuckle and the distant lowing of cattle settling for the night. "Happy?" Ryder asked. "Yes," Miriam said, and realized it was true. "Happier than I've been in years, maybe ever. I feel like I have a purpose here, like I'm building something real." "You are. We both are." He hesitated, then continued. "I've been thinking about our partnership agreement." Miriam's heart sank a little. Had she done something wrong? What about it? Well, by my calculation, you've more than worked off the debt I paid for you. Between the bookkeeping improvements, the better prices you've negotiated with buyers, and all the work you've put in, you've earned your full half of this ranch. We're equal partners now, officially." "Oh." Miriam did not know what to say. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. You earned it fair and square." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "But I was hoping maybe we could renegotiate the terms of our partnership." "I don't understand." "Miriam, somewhere between pulling you off that bridge and now, I fell in love with you." The words came out in a rush, as though he had been holding them back for a long time. "I know that wasn't part of our original agreement, and I don't want to make things awkward if you don't feel the same way. But I couldn't let another day go by without telling you the truth. You're the strongest, smartest, most capable woman I've ever met, and spending time with you is the best part of my day. I don't just want you as a business partner anymore. I want you as my partner in everything, if you'll have me." Miriam's breath caught in her throat. She thought about the man who had stopped on a bridge to ask her name, who had refused to leave her alone in her darkest moment. She thought about how safe she felt in his presence, how natural it felt to work beside him, to plan their future together. She thought about how her heart lifted every time he smiled at her, how she found excuses to seek him out during the day just to hear his voice. "I fell in love with you too," she whispered. "I think maybe I started falling that first night, when you offered me hope instead of pity. But I was afraid to say anything, because I didn't want to ruin what we have. You could never ruin it." Ryder reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "So, what do you say? Want to take a chance on an even deeper partnership with this cowboy?" "Yes," Miriam said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes." He kissed her then, soft and sweet in the fading light, and Miriam felt something that had been knotted tight in her chest finally unfurl. This was home, she realized. Not the house or the land, but this man who had seen her at her lowest and helped her build herself back up into someone stronger. They were married in September, a small ceremony in the ranch's main room with just a few neighbors and friends as witnesses. Miriam wore a simple dress of cream-colored muslin, and Ryder wore his best suit, looking slightly uncomfortable but deeply happy. Robert made the journey from Austin to give away the bride, claiming it was his right as Ryder's only family. "I knew it," he said, hugging Miriam. "I saw it in both your faces the day you arrived. Just took you two a while to figure it out yourselves." The ranch hands had decorated the porch with wildflowers, and Maria, the woman who helped with cooking and cleaning during busy seasons, had made a beautiful cake. As the sun set on their wedding day, Ryder pulled Miriam into his arms for a dance, humming a waltz since they had no music. "Happy, Mrs. Hamilton?" he asked. "Happier than I knew was possible," she replied honestly. "You saved my life that night on the bridge, Ryder, in every way that matters." "We saved each other," he corrected. "I was drowning in responsibilities and loneliness before you came along. You gave me purpose, too." Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. A drought in late summer meant supplementing the cattle's grazing with purchased feed, cutting into their profits. One of the ranch hands was badly injured when his horse spooked and threw him, requiring weeks of recovery. A dispute with a neighboring rancher over water rights took months to resolve, but they faced each challenge together, and Miriam found that sharing both the burdens and the triumphs made everything more bearable. She discovered she was pregnant in the spring of 1879, and Ryder's joy was almost comical in its intensity. He immediately began fussing over her, trying to prevent her from doing any heavy work, until she finally had to sit him down and explain that she was having a baby, not suffering from a fatal illness. "I'm still gonna worry," he said, his hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. "That's my right as the father. You can worry all you want, but you also have to let me keep working. I'll go mad if you try to make me sit around for 6 months doing nothing." They compromised, with Miriam taking on less physical labor but remaining heavily involved in the business operations. As her pregnancy progressed through the hot summer months, she spent more time in the office they had set up in one of the spare rooms, managing accounts and correspondence while Ryder and the hands dealt with the outdoor work. Their son was born in December, during a cold snap that glazed the water troughs with ice. The birth was long and difficult, with Miriam laboring through a full day and into the night. Maria stayed with her the whole time, along with a midwife from the neighboring ranch, while Ryder paced the main room and wore a groove in the floor with his worried strides. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Ryder burst into tears at the sight of him. "He's beautiful," he said hoarsely, cradling his son with shaking hands. "You're both beautiful. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you." They named him Robert Jacob, honoring both Ryder's uncle and Miriam's father. Little Bobby was a colicky baby who kept them up many nights, but neither of them minded. Miriam would walk the floor with him while Ryder made her tea, or Ryder would take a turn bouncing the crying infant while Miriam caught a few precious hours of sleep. "I never knew I could love anyone this much," Miriam said one night, watching Ryder finally coax Bobby into sleep. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes. And now there's this tiny person who owns my heart completely." "I know exactly what you mean," Ryder said. "Sometimes I look at you two, and I can't believe this is my life, that I get to have this." As Bobby grew from infant to toddler, the ranch continued to prosper under their joint management. Word spread about the quality of the Circle H's cattle and horses, and buyers began seeking them out rather than the other way around. They expanded their operation gradually, purchasing additional land and increasing their herd size. Miriam's business acumen and Ryder's ranching expertise proved to be an unbeatable combination. By 1881, they had saved enough to make significant improvements to the ranch house, adding 2 more bedrooms and a proper office. They also built a new barn and expanded the corrals. The ranch hand's bunkhouse was renovated and improved, helping them attract and retain quality workers. "Remember when you asked me on that bridge if I was happy?" Miriam said one evening as they watched Bobby chase fireflies in the yard. "I don't think I even understood what happiness really meant back then. But this, right here, this is everything I never knew I needed." "That makes 2 of us," Ryder said, pulling her close. "Though I think we should probably give Bobby a brother or sister. He's going to get lonely being an only child." Miriam laughed. "Is that your roundabout way of saying you want another baby? Maybe? Is it working?" Their daughter arrived in the spring of 1882, an easier birth that still left Ryder pale and shaken until he held his healthy baby girl. They named her Rose, and she had her mother's dark hair and her father's blue-gray eyes. Bobby, now 2.5, was fascinated by his baby sister and insisted on helping with everything from diaper changes to feedings. The years flowed by in a river of hard work, love, and steady growth. Bobby and Rose grew into bright, capable children who learned to ride almost before they could walk. They helped with age-appropriate ranch chores and absorbed lessons about responsibility and stewardship of the land. When Bobby was 8 and Rose was 6, they welcomed another son, Daniel, who completed their family. Ryder's prediction that they would make a fine team had proven more accurate than either of them could have imagined. The Circle H became known as one of the best-run operations in the region, a model of efficiency and innovation. Other ranchers sought Ryder's advice on breeding programs and Miriam's counsel on business management. On a February evening in 1888, exactly 10 years after the night they met, Ryder and Miriam took a rare evening alone together while the children stayed with Maria. They rode out to a hill overlooking the ranch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Do you ever think about that night on the bridge?" Ryder asked. "Sometimes," Miriam admitted. "Not often anymore, but yes. It feels like a different lifetime, like it happened to a different person." "In a way, it did. You're not that scared, desperate girl anymore, and I'm not just a cowboy trailing cattle to market. No, we're partners in everything." She leaned against his shoulder, comfortable in the silence that stretched between them. "I'm glad you stopped that night. Glad you asked my name. Glad you wouldn't leave me alone. Glad you walked me home safe. If you hadn't, I never would have known any of this was possible. I'm glad I stopped too. Best decision I ever made." He kissed the top of her head. "But you know what? I think you would have made it through somehow, even without me. You're the strongest person I know, Miriam. You just needed someone to remind you of that." They sat together until the stars emerged, mapping the constellations they had learned to navigate by during long nights of calving season or late cattle drives. Below them, the lights of the ranch house glowed warm and welcoming, a beacon of home and family and everything they had built together. The children grew and thrived. Bobby showed a natural talent for working with horses and spent hours in the corrals training colts with a patience and gentleness that reminded Miriam of his father. Rose had inherited her mother's head for numbers and could calculate weights and prices in her head faster than most adults could with pencil and paper. Daniel was still young, but he showed signs of combining both his parents' talents, equally comfortable in the office or the saddle. In 1890, when Bobby was 11, Rose was 9, and Daniel was 4. A severe drought tested the ranch's resilience. Creeks that usually ran year-round dwindled to trickles, and grazing became scarce. Many neighboring ranchers lost significant portions of their herds, but the Circle H weathered the crisis better than most, thanks to Miriam's careful financial planning and Ryder's foresight in maintaining the ranch's water infrastructure. "This is why we save money during the good years," Miriam explained to the children as they worked together to haul water to the cattle. "So, we have resources to draw on when times get hard. Running a ranch isn't just about the day-to-day work. It's about planning for the future, preparing for challenges you can't predict." The drought finally broke in the fall, and the ranch recovered quickly. The experience reinforced to both Ryder and Miriam the importance of the partnership they had built, not just with each other, but with their workers and their land. They had created something resilient, something that could bend without breaking. Robert visited regularly from Austin, delighting in his honorary grandchildren and marveling at how the ranch had flourished. On one visit in 1892, he pulled Miriam aside while Ryder was showing the children how to repair a saddle. "I want you to know something," the old man said. "That day Ryder telegraphed me about meeting you and the partnership he was proposing. I thought he had lost his mind. Hitching himself to a stranger, paying off debts for someone he barely knew, it seemed like the height of foolishness. But I've never been happier to be wrong about anything. You're the best thing that ever happened to him, and to this ranch. You gave him something I never could, a real family, a true home." "He gave me those things too," Miriam said, her eyes misting. "When I met Ryder, I had nothing and no one. He gave me hope, purpose, love. Everything good in my life stems from that night he stopped on the bridge and refused to walk away. You two were meant to find each other, I'm sure of it." As the century drew toward its close, the Circle H continued to grow and adapt. They added sheep to their operation, diversifying their income streams. They experimented with new breeding techniques and drought-resistant crops. Miriam began investing their profits wisely, purchasing shares in railroad companies and other enterprises that promised steady returns. Bobby, now a young man of 17, began taking on more responsibility in the daily operations. He had his father's steady temperament and his mother's sharp mind, and Ryder began teaching him the deeper lessons of land management and leadership. Rose, at 15, had become invaluable in managing the business side of the ranch, working alongside her mother to negotiate contracts and manage accounts. Even young Daniel, now 10, had his regular chores and responsibilities. One evening in 1896, after the children had gone to bed, Ryder and Miriam sat together on the porch as they had countless times before. The ranch was quiet except for the usual night sounds, horses shifting in the corrals, the distant yip of a coyote, the creak of the windmill. "Do you remember what you asked me that first night?" Miriam said quietly. "You asked what was troubling me, and I said you didn't know anything about it. I remember everything about that night. I was so certain that my problems were insurmountable, that there was no possible future worth living for. I was so wrong." She took his hand, lacing their fingers together in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over the years. "Every good thing in my life came from the moment you asked me my name. Our children, this home, the work we do, the life we've built, all of it. That night changed my life too," Ryder said. "I was on track to become a lonely old bachelor, married to the ranch and nothing else. You taught me that there was room for so much more, for love and family and partnership in the truest sense. You made me better than I was." "We made each other better," Miriam corrected. "That's what real partnership is about." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars wheel overhead. After 18 years together, they had learned that not every moment needed to be filled with words. Sometimes the deepest communication came in shared quiet, in the simple presence of two people who understood each other completely. As the new century dawned, the Circle H stood as a testament to what could be built through hard work, trust, and love. The ranch that Ryder had inherited from his uncle had tripled in size and value, its reputation for quality stretching across Texas and beyond. But, more importantly, it had become a true home, filled with laughter and love and the chaos of a growing family. Bobby married in 1901, bringing his bride Helen to live at the ranch. She was the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a capable woman who fit seamlessly into the family. Rose, showing no interest in marriage despite numerous suitors, announced her intention to expand the business side of the operation, starting a horse breeding program that specialized in working animals suited to ranch life. Daniel, now 15, was already making plans to attend agricultural college, determined to bring modern scientific methods to ranching. Watching their children build their own futures, Miriam sometimes thought back to that desperate girl standing on a bridge, convinced her life was over. If she could go back and tell that girl what lay ahead, the love she would find, the family she would build, the success and joy that awaited, she was not sure that girl would believe it possible. But it had all been possible because of a cowboy who stopped to ask her name, who refused to leave her alone in her darkest hour, who walked her home safe and then offered her a future worth living for. Ryder had saved her life in the most literal sense, but he had also given her a reason to live it, a purpose and partnership that had sustained her through nearly a quarter century of joys and challenges. In 1903, on their 25th wedding anniversary, their children organized a celebration that brought together friends and neighbors from across the region. The ranch house overflowed with people, laughter, and the evidence of a life well lived. Standing in the middle of it all, Ryder pulled Miriam close and whispered in her ear, "Still happy, Mrs. Hamilton?" "Happier than I have words to express," she replied. "Every single day with you has been a gift, even the hard days, especially the hard days, because we face them together." "Here's to 25 more," he said, raising his glass to toast her. "At least," Miriam agreed, and kissed him to the cheers and applause of everyone gathered. The years continued their steady march. Bobby and Helen had children of their own, giving Ryder and Miriam 4 grandchildren who ran wild around the ranch just as their parents had. Rose's breeding program became nationally recognized, with buyers coming from as far as California and Montana to purchase Circle H horses. Daniel returned from college with new ideas about soil management and water conservation that helped the ranch become even more efficient and sustainable. Ryder's hair turned silver, and Miriam's dark locks gained their own threads of gray, but the love between them remained as strong as ever. They still made time for evening rides together, still talked through every major decision affecting the ranch, still fell asleep each night in each other's arms. On a February evening in 1908, 30 years to the day after they met, Ryder surprised Miriam by taking her back to Laredo. They had not been to the town in decades, and it had grown and changed significantly in the intervening years. But the bridge still stood, spanning the Rio Grande just as it had that long-ago night. "Why did you bring me here?" Miriam asked as they walked out onto the wooden planks, their footsteps echoing in the gathering dusk. "Because this is where everything began," Ryder said simply. "This is where I met the woman who would become my partner, my wife, the mother of my children, the love of my life. I wanted to stand here with you and remember that night and be grateful for every day since." Miriam looked down at the water flowing beneath them, no longer dark and threatening, but simply a river doing what rivers do. "I was so lost that night, so convinced that the darkness was all there was. But it wasn't. There was light ahead, you just couldn't see it yet. Because you helped me see it. You were the light, Ryder. You and everything we built together." She turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. "If I could go back and tell that frightened girl on this bridge that in 30 years she would be standing here with the man she loves, with children and grandchildren and a life beyond her wildest dreams, I don't think she would believe it. Then it's a good thing she doesn't need to believe it. She just needs to live it." He pulled her close, holding her as the stars began to emerge overhead. "I love you, Miriam Hamilton. I loved you that first night when you told me your name. I loved you the day we married. I loved you the day each of our children was born, and I love you now. And I'll keep loving you every day we have left." "And I love you," Miriam whispered. "Thank you for asking my name. Thank you for walking me home safe. Thank you for giving me a life worth living." They stood together on the bridge until full dark, 2 people who had found each other in the darkness and built a life together in the light. Behind them lay 30 years of shared joys and sorrows, triumphs and challenges, all woven together into a partnership stronger than either of them could have created alone. Ahead lay whatever years remained, and they would face those together too, just as they had faced everything else. Eventually, they walked off the bridge and back to where they had left their horses, ready to return to the ranch and the family waiting for them there. But both of them carried the memory of that night, the night a cowboy asked a desperate girl her name and changed both their lives forever. The Circle H continued to thrive under their stewardship, and as they grew older, they gradually transitioned more responsibility to their children. Bobby took over most of the daily operations, while Rose managed the business side, and Daniel implemented his agricultural innovations. But Ryder and Miriam remained active and involved, their wisdom and experience invaluable resources. They added a tradition to the ranch, insisting that every February on the anniversary of the night they met, they would return to the bridge in Laredo. Sometimes the whole family came, turning it into an extended celebration. Other times, it was just the two of them, reconnecting with the place where their story began. On their 40th anniversary trip in 1918, they brought all their children and grandchildren, now numbering 8. Standing on the bridge with their family surrounding them, Ryder told the story of that first meeting for what must have been the 100th time. But no one minded. It was their family's origin story, the moment from which everything else had flowed. "Your grandmother was the bravest person I ever met," he said, his arm around Miriam's waist. She was facing impossible circumstances, and even when she thought she had no options left, she found the courage to accept help and build a new life. That takes more strength than most people ever have to show. "And your grandfather was the kindest," Miriam added. "He saw someone in trouble and didn't just walk by. He stopped, he asked questions, he listened, and he helped. Not because he expected anything in return, but because it was the right thing to do. That's the example I want all of you to follow." Their oldest grandson, Bobby's son Robert, spoke up. "But you did get something in return, Grandpa. You got Grandma and the ranch and all of us." "That's true," Ryder agreed with a smile. "But I didn't know that would happen when I stopped to talk to her. I just knew I couldn't walk away and leave her alone. Sometimes you do the right thing simply because it's right, and the rewards come later, unexpectedly." As the sun set over the Rio Grande, painting the water in shades of gold and crimson, the family began the journey back to San Antonio, where they were staying for the anniversary celebration. But Ryder and Miriam lingered on the bridge, watching the light fade just as they had 40 years earlier. "Do you think we've built a good legacy?" Miriam asked. "Something that will last beyond us?" "I know we have," Ryder said with certainty. "Look at our children and grandchildren. They're strong, capable, kind people who know the value of hard work and family. They'll carry on what we started, and they'll make it even better. The Circle H will still be thriving long after we're gone." "I'm not ready to be gone yet," Miriam said. "I still have too many things I want to do, too many years I want to spend with you." "Then we'll just have to stick around as long as possible," Ryder replied. "I'm not ready to leave either. I'm having too good a time." They walked off the bridge hand in hand, a gesture that looked the same as it had 40 years earlier, but carried so much more history and depth. Every clasped hand was a reminder of all the times they had held each other up, supported each other through crises, celebrated victories together. Their hands bore the marks of a lifetime of work calluses and scars, weathered skin and age spots. But to each other, they were still beautiful, still precious. The years passed gently for Ryder and Miriam. They remained active well into their 70s, still riding out to check on cattle occasionally, still managing certain aspects of the ranch's operations. Their children had fully taken over the day-to-day work, but Ryder and Miriam's counsel was frequently sought and always valued. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in 1928, a grand event that brought together not just family, but friends from across Texas and beyond. The Circle H had become something of a legend in ranching circles, known for its progressive management and the partnership at its heart. People came to pay tribute not just to the ranch's success, but to the love story that had made it possible. During the celebration, Ryder stood to make a toast. At 76, he was still tall and straight-backed, his hair white as snow, but his blue-gray eyes as sharp as ever. 50 years ago, I married the smartest decision I ever made, he began, drawing laughter from the crowd. But the truth is, the smart decision came before that. On a bridge in Laredo, when I decided to stop and talk to a young woman who looked like she needed a friend. That decision gave me everything that matters: love, family, purpose, joy. So, my advice to all of you, especially the young people, is this. Don't walk by when you see someone in need. Stop, ask their name, and see where it leads. You might just change your life and theirs. Miriam stood to respond, still beautiful at 71, her dark hair now silver, but her bearing proud and strong. 50 years ago, I married the man who saved my life, but he didn't just save me from one bad night. He saved me every day after that by being my partner in the truest sense. We built this ranch together, raised our children together, faced every challenge, and celebrated every victory together. That's what I want you all to remember, the power of true partnership, of facing life with someone who sees you as an equal, who values your strengths and supports your weaknesses. Ryder gave me that, and it made all the difference. They kissed to thunderous applause, and the celebration continued long into the night, filled with music and dancing and stories of the past 5 decades. As they finally retired to their room in the early hours of the morning, Ryder helped Miriam out of her formal dress and into her nightgown, his hands gentle and familiar. "Tired?" he asked. "Exhausted," she admitted, "but happy. It was a good party." "It was a good 50 years, he corrected. "The party was just a nice way to mark it." They lay in bed together, Miriam's head resting on Ryder's shoulder, as it had thousands of times before. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked sleepily. "Stopping on that bridge, taking on a stranger's problems, tying yourself to someone you barely knew?" "Never. Not for a single moment in 50 years. He kissed her forehead. "Do you regret accepting my help?" "Never. It was the best decision I ever made, next to marrying you." "Those were the same decision, really." "I suppose they were," Miriam agreed, and drifted off to sleep in the arms of the man who had asked her name and changed her life forever. They were given several more good years together, years spent enjoying their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, watching the ranch continue to flourish under new generations of leadership and simply being together. They still made their annual pilgrimage to the bridge in Laredo every February, a tradition they maintained even as travel became more difficult with age. On a quiet morning in 1932, Ryder passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 80. He had been working in the corrals the day before, teaching his great-grandson how to properly halter a young horse, and had seemed in good health and spirits. But his heart simply stopped during the night, ending a life well lived without pain or prolonged suffering. Miriam was devastated by the loss, but she faced it with the same strength she had brought to every challenge in their 54 years together. At his funeral, attended by what seemed like half of Texas, she spoke about the man who had asked her name and then spent the rest of his life making sure she never regretted telling him. "Ryder Hamilton was the best man I ever knew," she said, her voice strong despite her grief. "He was kind when he could have walked away. He was generous when he could have been selfish. He was patient when he could have been demanding. He built a partnership with me based on respect and equality. And he loved me every day of our marriage with a devotion I never took for granted. The world is poorer for his passing, but richer for his having been in it." The family wanted Miriam to move in with one of them after Ryder's death, worried about her living alone in the ranch house. But she refused gently but firmly. "This is my home," she said, "mine and Ryder's. I'm not ready to leave it yet. I still have work to do." And she did. At 75, Miriam remained sharp and engaged, still managing certain aspects of the ranch's business operations and serving as an advisor to her children and grandchildren. She found comfort in work, in maintaining the legacy she and Ryder had built together. Every February she made the trip to Laredo alone, standing on the bridge and remembering the night a cowboy had stopped to ask her name. She would tell Ryder about the past year, about the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, about the ranch's continued success, about how much she missed him, but how grateful she was for every year they had together. "I'll see you again someday," she would say to the river and the stars. "But not yet. I have a few more things to do first." Miriam lived another 8 years after Ryder's death, remaining active and involved in the ranch until the very end. She passed away peacefully in 1940 at the age of 83, surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren in the ranch house she and Ryder had made into a home. Her funeral was held at the Circle H, and she was buried beside Ryder on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The headstone read simply, "Miriam Hamilton, 1857-1940, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, partner in all things." The Circle H continued to thrive under new generations of family leadership, becoming one of the most respected ranches in Texas history. But more than the land or the cattle or the business success, Ryder and Miriam's true legacy was the example they set of kindness, partnership, love, and the courage to take a chance on an unlikely connection that changed both their lives forever. Their story became family legend, passed down through generations. Great-great-grandchildren who never met them still knew about the night Grandpa Ryder stopped on a bridge and asked Grandma Miriam her name, about how he walked her home safe and then gave her a future worth living for, about how they built a life and a legacy together based on trust, respect, and love. The bridge in Laredo eventually was replaced by a modern structure, but a historical marker was placed nearby, commemorating its significance in local history. Among other events, it noted, on this site in February 1878, Ryder Hamilton met Miriam Foster, beginning a partnership that would become legendary in Texas ranching history. Their story exemplifies the kindness and courage that built the American West. And on quiet evenings at the Circle H, when the work was done and the family gathered together, someone would always eventually tell the story of how it all began with a desperate girl on a bridge, a cowboy who refused to walk away, and a simple question that changed everything. What's your name? It was a story of darkness transformed into light, of despair redeemed by kindness, of two people who found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something beautiful together. It was, above all, a love story for the ages, proof that sometimes the most important decision you can make is to stop and ask someone their name, to walk them home safe, and to see where the journey leads from there.